Welcome to episode 7 of the Crackpot podcast with James LaFond and Lynn Lockhart. This episode was taped on August 17th. Hey, good morning, James.
Good morning, Lynn.
How are you?
Oh, I'm doing okay. It's the first day in a long while. I've been pleased with my writing output, so I'm feeling okay.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. It's August 17th for the documentation purposes, if anyone's keeping track. And James put up a bunch of stuff this morning.
That's right. When I'm done talking to you, I'm going to eat something salty, grab a slave girl, and I'm going to get drunk drinking Ham's beer.
All right.
Might even start out with a shot of whiskey, see what I can do to erase some of these nagging thoughts I can't get out of my head. If I'm not successful, I'll write again tomorrow.
I have a feeling you will write again tomorrow. Do you want to talk about what's nagging you?
Oh, I have so many books in the air, and my site could get trashed at any time.
Yeah.
So it's going to take me probably about 40 hours to copy and paste. I build my books by copying and pasting off the front end. It'll take me about 40 hours, I think, to get 25 or 30 of these books in various stages of completion. About 5 of them are over 300 or 400 pages right now.
Oh, wow.
To copy and paste those and get them into a Word document. And then I can, write the foreword and the afterword, go through and do a really crappy job of proofreading it and editing it, and, maybe insert a couple of things. But the important thing is just to get it off the front of the site, and then in the future, whenever I write something, after I correct it, because I do corrections on the back end, so once I put it on the site, it's improved compared to what I've got in my original Word documents. I don't want to use that.
Yeah.
So I will just have to copy and paste the newly posted article into my ongoing documents, which will mean that in the future there'll be less lag time between me finishing writing the content for a book and then me publishing it.
Yeah.
But for the next couple of weeks, it'll be a pain in the neck doing it the way I should have done it all along.
So it's kind of like a catch-up in the process. But yeah, it sounds like it will be a better process going forward.
All right. And eventually, when the site gets taken down, I just plan on publishing a book every week.
Yeah, you have more time.
So that'll be what I do. So maybe it'll be a magazine.
Yeah.
In book form.
Well, I have your in-process list on my precious spreadsheet that I made of all your published works, so I'll be updating that, I guess. I don't know if maybe when you're all through, you'll update your in-progress status for us.
Okay.
Well, I think we should start today. Now that our greetings are out of the way, we should start with our fiction that we're reading together, which is The Worm Ouroboros. And we had also talked about another related topic, which was the world building for a fiction writer like yourself.
Yes.
And so we can jump in wherever you would like. If you want to talk, you have written some advanced show notes, and I have those in front of me.
That's good, because I do not. They went down the memory hole.
They're already down the memory hole. Or you can talk about world building first if you want, whatever you like.
That's what I started out writing. I started out writing game rules for board games, and then I went to developing settings for role-playing, and I claimed that they were for role-playing because that's the only way you could sell that stuff, but I was really doing it to practice writing, and I was also doing it to develop settings to write fiction, and I still have one of them in book form that's never been published, and I don't think I'm going to publish it as a role-playing setting. I think I'd rather just use it as a place to set stories in.
Yeah. So that's something nobody's ever seen?
That's correct. Bard Games, Stephen Michael Setzi, who's also a musician, he actually was going to publish it. And then he got bought out by Wizards of the Coast, I think, some game company. And I think they didn't even end up publishing his stuff. They gave him money for, I think, breach of contract. And so he walked away with a bunch of money and never got it published. But he had previously published this stuff that was in Walden bookstores under Tau-Atlanta. He did a book on alchemy. And these were perfect bound books that looked really nice compared to the role-playing stuff that was out then. He worked with P.D. Breeding-Black, who was a really good artist. And his stuff was a lot more sophisticated and looked better than most of what was out there with the role-playing. He liked my stuff better than he liked his. And I got lucky to work with a couple of good artists, too. But everybody else hated my stuff. You know, the people that liked his stuff hated my stuff. You know, so the guy that reviewed my tribe setting from Wizards of the Coast, he was nice, but you could tell he was pretty much horrified. These are all sissy people. Stephen wasn't. Stephen played football. You know, he was a rough guy. So from, I think, Connecticut. Mm-hmm. Anyhow, I used to be an obsessive world builder. That's what I did. I had the ping pong table in the basement of my parents' ranch house in Pennsylvania where my brother and I lived. I used that to draw maps on. I would do hex maps for chit-based word games, and I would just do a lot of maps. I still have some of them somewhere. I once did a map of feudal Japan, which was really good for a game design that I ended up aborting because I knew I wasn't going to be able to complete it. The development was going to be too hard. So I just loved maps. I would sit in school and make maps of fantasy islands all the time when I was a kid.
I always loved the old Explorer maps.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
With a ship going over the edge.
Yeah. I had posters up in my room of those, you know, the Age of Sail kind of maps.
The cover of the album by Kansas, I think there was their debut album. It's got a picture of the ship going over the edge of the world. Yeah. And I just was always fascinated by all those little illustrations on the ancient maps. So I didn't have the talent to do those little illustrations on my maps, but, you know, I was a pen and crayon guy. As war game maps go, I made some decent area movement maps.
I always thought that, and I don't know if the Worm Ouroboros has a map, but I thought these types of books are so much better when they have a map up front. You know, I think probably The Hobbit does in some editions, if I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, Tolkien had maps that he made. Now, the map for Howard's Hyborian world, that was made by a reader, a fan, who sent it in to him. And Howard was like, yeah.
That
Like
works.
that.
Yeah.
But I have made a map for myself for Beyond the Pale, the uplifting Catholic world that I started writing it about a year ago, and it's still languishing there.
Yeah,
but it's about the kid that's kind of a savant. That's the son of the farmer. Yeah. So that setting is based on the supposition that what was decided at the Lateran Council that the communion was really eating the flesh and drinking the blood of Jesus Christ. I decided to base the world totally around the supposition that was a fact, and there's this giant Jesus that's nailed Prometheus-like to this mountain at the edge of the world, and you've got a bunch of monks out there carving carving flesh off of his shins and bleeding it into crafts and amphora and spitting it off.
Do you know who Anne Barnhart is?
No.
She's one of your fellow internet crackpots, but she's really I don't know what to say, kind of a rabid Catholic, and that's what she's written, that's what she believes. That's what the true.
That's what she's supposed to believe.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, and everybody in my world is going to believe it too. It'll make things much simpler.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a problem. Something is going to be going wrong with the Savior. If he stops bleeding and his legs stop regrowing, it means the end. So I think that's going to be a trilogy if I ever get it done, and it's something I really want to do. But I have so many other fiction things lined up in front of it, and all my fiction has been shunted aside for things like idiots thinking that the police are going to stand by and watch them beat up Antifa faggots.
Well, the current events, I feel like the whole current events is just, it's so out of control that there's just too much happening at once.
Yeah, it's spiraled into insane.
Yeah. It's monumental insanity. That's the title I came up with. Monumental insanity.
That's where we live in now.
Yeah. But getting back to the world building, I think there's this huge contrast because a lot of people, especially Tolkien fans, I remember we were talking about that. You wrote a piece about Tolkien a few months ago for the Masculine Axis, and we actually had a comment from someone who complained that the movie wasn't insufficiently true to the books, and I was struck because there are so many people that they get so attached to these worlds, and they get really hurt when something doesn't work, doesn't come out right, or it doesn't fit with their worldview of how these characters behave and stuff, and that's a big contrast with Howard because, and I haven't read as much Howard as I'd like to, but he just kind of runs in there and writes a story and runs back out, and it's not too important that it all fits together perfectly, or that there's a huge amount of detail about all these various magical creatures or whatever it might be.
It's a different type of escapism.
Yeah.
Okay. The way Howard's writing, Burroughs used to write like this. It was escapism, but it was designed to be consumed by people who were also into activities of their own, not just looking for a cozy construct to sink themselves into. There's this one girl I know of who's a big Hobbit fan, and she even takes figurines of of Frodo and Sam and dresses them up, and they're gay, and she takes them around and takes pictures of them in different places and stuff like that. So I don't want to have Tolkien readers. I want to have Howard readers. I want to have people reading that actually live a real life and aren't just these geeks that fixate on something, a place that's been made up so that you have a better suspension of disbelief, so you can carry your stories through a longer arc. It's made up for that reason, to get you into the stories, and the story is supposed to help you with your life and present underlying truths. And people that just geek out and get into, what color robe some Jedi wears or something like that.
Yeah, Star Wars, Star Trek, Harry Potter, people just go nuts.
Well, it's really, it reminds me of that movie The Matrix, where when the actor wakes up and he's hooked into this machine. Mm-hmm. And that's what it is. That type of, and that's why I got out of the obsessive world building thing, because I could see that's where it was going to go, and I wanted to write action. And for the Beyond the Pale novels. I do have an extensive. I worked out the astronomy and everything, and I have done extensive world building on it. But I'm not going to show any more to the reader than what the character would see, and that's the other thing that where the Tolkien, where that type of fantasy goes, is the same place where a soap opera goes.
Yeah.
Where the viewer knows a lot more than
any given
than
character.
The character.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it puts them in this God place, and it's the type of thing that really appeals to women, and it appeals to sissies. Okay, because they feel like they have this super knowledge over the characters. Actually, feel superior to the characters. I'd rather have them get invested in the character.
Yeah. I used to, when I was really little, I used to think that they were waiting for me. That I had to get back and finish the book because the people in the book were waiting. were waiting for
Well, they
me.
are.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
Because they live in your mind, so they are waiting for you.
Yeah.
That's another great thing about children. But Howard's approach, stylistically, I don't think I'm anything like him, but Howard, the Burroughs approach, that's what I want to do. And I know that's not going to sell. What's going to sell is going to be the 7 big fat volumes of what people are wearing and what they eat.
It does remind me also, because I know you're working on your book about Moby Dick, because he spent so much of that book just describing Nantucket, describing the ship, the minutia of how you. I remember reading about how they render the whale fat on board the ship after they catch it, so he does a lot of that, but that's really more of like a nonfiction. I was really absorbed by all those details.
Well, but that's all in the field of action, really. Everything that he's really showing you an extremely narrow slice of life. And even when he's going over the structure of Nantucket, and the town on the coast, Bedford, I think that they sailed from to get out to Nantucket. He explains how it all comes from the whaling.
Yeah.
And this is built with oil.
Yeah.
And it's a real living place too. You got the bum dying on the step of the place when he first goes into the Spouter Inn. Mm-hmm. There's this guy that's that's dying in the cold with his head on this slate curb. So that he does an extensive exit from the mundane world and transfers the reader into the world of adventure, and he does it using a lot of artifice. So that was really done well. My whole book, The Pale Usher, is really just about that. It's just about those first 30 chapters. Yeah. It's not about the adventure part. It's really about separating from the mundane society.
Yeah, I really liked when he said that he had to tattoo on his arm the size, all the measurements that he made when he was. Do you remember that part?
Yes.
He had been away on the island. I just love that. Like, I have to remember this. There's no other way. And he tattooed it on his arm. Just the devotion to the actual physical details of it, Yeah,
and it's largely character building and not world building, what you're talking about with him.
Yeah.
With Melville. Now, the worm Ouroboros. Mm-hmm. What do you think so far? We're just a couple chapters in. I'm almost done the second chapter. I like the poem. I like the induction, the first chapter, and I'm on the second chapter now, where the
wrestling.
The one. Yes, where the Lord is wrestling the king, and that's very Hellenic. How he handles that.
I haven't got to chapter 2 yet, but if we go back to the start, I did some outside reading. Okay, so the word Ouroboros that's this dragon that is eating his own tail. That's what that's called. So that's like an ancient, fantastical creature. And I don't know when that comes into the story, but I actually bought the same volume that you're reading, the Barnes and Noble.
Okay.
So that's kind of fun.
And the piece of art of the worm,
yeah,
resembles the symbol that they used for a prop on the Conan the Barbarian movie.
Oh,
which
I haven't watched
the bad
that
guys, Thulsa Doom, they had this symbol of, I think it was two snakes coming together, not a snake eating its own tail, but it was reminiscent of that. So I was wondering a little bit if John Milius might have been using some of this.
Yeah, I haven't seen that movie. Should probably put that on my to-do list.
Yeah, it's worth seeing.
Yeah. And then the poem that he opens with is not his. He signs it Thomas the Rhymer, and that's an old, English myth kind of a poem.
Okay, so he didn't assign that to some fictional rhymer in this world.
Yeah,
okay,
that's a real folk poem there. But it's got the themes that you brought out, which were the Sylvan myth, forest myth, and I noticed that in the induction, when Lessingham he goes to sleep in the Lotus Room, that his windows in that room open up to the forest as well. And then we say, why is the ancient order expressed through the feminine queen and the nature and the significance of the Eildon tree? So I think it has shades of the Garden of Eden, right? That the female is coming and tempting a man near a tree.
I think so.
Yeah.
And particularly with the Lotus Room. What I found fascinating today, I just posted it. Lamano sent me his thoughts on this, and he says that he had this reoccurring dream. It was a dream setting that he returns to. And I just found that fascinating. So he's intrigued with this story.
We'll say hello, Lamano. Thanks for joining us in this reading. I haven't. Have you read this book before? Is this your first time reading it?
No.
Me too.
I never read it before, and as soon as I saw it was suggested to me. I was with Mescaline Franklin at the bookstore. He picks it up and he says, "You ought to read this." And I look at it. I've never seen or heard of this book before. I said, "When was that written?" And he opens it up. It's 1922. This was a guy that Lovecraft read. And I said, well, I have to read it.
Yeah.
So I just took it, and as soon as I looked at it, and the dreamlike aspect of it, to me, there has to be something in here. The war, the coming war, is depicted as a traitorous war where former allies that didn't take as many casualties are now threatening the allies that took more casualties, defeating the common enemy.
Yeah. And
there's all these heroic undertones, like the one lord is going to wrestle with this king.
Yeah.
To decide a certain point of honor. And that had all been completely swept into oblivion 4 years before this book was written.
Right.
And I have no idea if this guy served in that war as Tolkien and C.S. Lewis did, but he had to know dozens of people that did.
Yeah.
It was, the best men in Britain all got marched to their death in a single day.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, it was a traitorous war. So I think there's got to be, this has got to be something of a reaction to what Ernst Younger paints in his Storm of Steel, where being a hero is simply surviving this vast dehumanizing machine that's trying to erase you. That's about as heroic as you can get under those circumstances. So this seems almost a whimsical return, like Alice in Wonderland for disappointed men.
Yeah. I really like English literature. I know when I put that poem up by Kipling, you said that now there are two Englishmen that you could admire.
Yeah, Kipling and Burton,
Yeah,
right?
but but English literature is just it's what we have, you know. We read a lot of Lewis at home because it's good for the kids. I think the Narnia books and a little bit of Tolkien, although it's a little harder to get through for the kids to listen. But and I love uh, Alice and all the stuff that guy wrote. I can't remember his name right now, but he was a mathematician and
Alice in Wonderland
yeah,
and Through the Looking Glass.
yeah, and his poetry
And
too. It's so
just drew
silly,
a
but
blank.
I really love it. Hmm?
Yeah, I just drew a blank on his name too.
Yeah, he used a pseudonym. I'll look it up right now. I'm at my computer, and then I'll feel.
Remember, he was an effeminate, kind of an effeminate-looking fellow, and he was into photography too.
Yeah, Lewis Carroll was his name.
Right, and I think taking like innocent photographs of children
Yeah, like
was a
orphan.
big thing
Yeah,
back then.
making them look like dressing up the little girls like an orphan and then taking a picture. Yeah, yeah. And Alice was a real little girl that he knew, and there's all sorts of speculation which I don't care to repeat, but I don't care. I really like the books. They're written with a mathematical uh, bent, and I really like
Right.
reading them.
Well, uh, there was plenty of disgusting stuff that was being done to children back then, but it wasn't men of this class that were doing it. By and large, your children were, with the privileged classes, children were a chance to try to make a pretense of innocence for somebody. And that's what I get out of that photographic tradition. We would look at it now and we would think of it as pedophilia, but it wasn't pornographic in any way. And it seemed to swing between depicting these children as either perfect little adults or some type of innocent that's been caught up in a bigger world. So I think to a certain degree, these people were projecting back on these kids, what they didn't have.
Yeah.
So I don't go with the pedophilic things. He wasn't an Oscar Wilde type of character.
Yeah. And Peter Pan also, J.M. Barrie, that's really beautiful. I mean, it's been done as a cartoon and movies and stuff hundreds of times, but the book itself is really affecting for me. So, I'm just trying to defend the English here.
And in the Worm Ouroboros, the wrestling between the king and the prince, that sounds just like there was a fellow named Amycus who was a giant king who demanded that people box with him when they come through his realm.
Mm.
And poex, Pawadukis,
Yeah.
where we get the term "put up your dukes."
Mm.
Pawadukis means very sweet, so it would be the same thing as calling them sugar that we do with our boxers now.
Yeah.
And he was the brother of Castor. Castor was the duelist. He was the killer. Poex, the Romans called him Poex, but to the Greeks he was a Pawadukis. He defeats this giant Amycus in this boxing match, and that's really a reworking of a legend about Apollo, that Apollo fought a giant king who was a tax collector when he was a prince and he was coming into the Hellenic sphere. That Apollo seems to be an ancestor that was Indo-European ancestor that was adopted in to the Hellenic mythos and put as a son underneath of Zeus.
Mm.
Probably a later invasion, just like Zeus displaced Poseidon
Right.
as the former sky god, and he remained the breaker horses, but he got sent down into the ocean. So that's what this really reminds me of, the scene we're getting into now. And I haven't read through it, so
I haven't either.
I don't have an opportunity to ruin it for you. I wouldn't anyhow.
You wouldn't, and I don't mind spoilers. Actually, I like to. I often will read things twice because I need to. I need to learn what the ending is, and then I can read it again slowly, calm down because I get too worried about the ending. This is
You're not the
maybe.
only one that does that.
I'm trying to.
I don't do that, but you're not the only one that does it. I know other people who do that.
Yeah. Um, this is. It's kind of reminding me why I kind of quit reading fiction because it stresses me out. Like I think about these people are waiting inside the book for me, and I worry what's about the ending, and it's like somehow adding stress to my life. But it's really enjoyable actually.
Well, I very much enjoy hearing that because now I enjoy having you as a reader more because I get the pleasure of knowing I'm going to stress you out immensely every time you have one of my fiction books. Yeah. Don't worry, I won't kill any characters on your account. I won't be that cruel.
Well,
Enough of bite the dust as it is.
yeah. Actually, that's something that you gave away because you said that you like to keep your characters alive in case there's demand for a sequel. So that actually removed a bunch of stress for me because I can.
Well, I make sure I keep one of them alive. It might not be the one you want.
Well, I can kind of guess who it's going to be. I think maybe I don't know, but it did. You removed some of the stress for me by doing
Okay.
that. So I don't know if that's good or bad. Then you wrote here, in his introduction, he gives a pronunciation guide, which is really kind of him, but he also wrote, "It is neither allegory or fable, but a story to be read for its own sake." In terms of this is for Ouroboros again.
Yeah, and that's why that's one reason why I think it's a rejection of what had gone on in the world right about the time he started writing this thing.
Yeah. Mark Twain made a similar disclaimer for like Huck Finn and those stories that just, you just need to write a story that young boys will want to read and not have to have a moral in the story. So that reminded me of Mark Twain.
Well, and messages are going to come through
They do.
in any case,
Yeah.
and they already have in this book to a certain degree. I really like the dreamy quality of it. I can see where that's going to limit its appeal with people. Wolf does it a lot better, but he's building partially to some extent on this guy's work.
Yeah.
What's the guy that's still alive?
I like that everybody in this world has kind of like a bad guy name. For us, it's the demons and the witches and the ghouls and the goblins. So far, that's all the nations that they have introduced. So
yeah, and that also went into my thinking that this is something of a rejection.
Yeah.
Of the war that had just finished, where everybody kind of met the same fate.
Yeah.
And they had just jointly defeated the ghouls.
Yeah. And genocided them. There wasn't a ghoul left alive. Yeah. I think you wrote it somewhere else unrelated, but you wrote something that you can't expect to do right or wrong in this world. I don't know where you wrote that. It was in the last couple days. But you.
Oh, I was paraphrasing at the end of the movie, Conan the Barbarian. These 3 guys are waiting to fight 20, 30 guys. Okay, and Arnold, barely speaking English, is saying a prayer to his uncaring god, Crom.
Yeah.
And he says something like, "It doesn't matter if we were good men or bad. All that matters is that a few stood against many."
Yeah.
And I ask your help in this battle, and if you don't hear me and you don't help, then the hell with you. Okay, so he's and that's what I believe. I really think I don't care if he's a criminal. If some guy robs a bank and he ends up fighting it out with 3 cops and he goes down, then to me he's a hero, and to the ancients he was a hero.
Yeah.
The hero was the person that broke the normal order of things. They were physically able to contend above where a normal man could. They could fight more than one man. They could fight a monster. And they also defied the gods. And if you're an atheist, you could think of the gods as the elements.
Yeah.
It's the laws of economics, whatever. It could just be a hero that's a hero because he's lucky. Because he rolled the dice and he won against the odds.
I think risk-taking is a big part of it. That you have to take a risk. You can't. I think masculinity is not. You can't be masculine if you're unwilling to take a risk.
It's the assigned role of that gender in a natural order is to take a risk. And
we have
our society, it's not.
It's a really risk-averse society and kind of selects for the people who become really spectacularly successful are usually risk takers, but the masses, if you're just a regular person, then you're rewarded for avoiding risk.
Yeah. So we live in an anti-heroic age. It's not just non-heroic, it's anti-heroic.
Yeah. And also the ambiguity, especially with all the crazy current events that we have now, the ambiguity, like who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. You just have to decide for yourself at that moment what's the right for you to do, because you can't align yourself with these crazy people who are marching here and there, or the cops. I mean, a lot of cops are really good people, but I think what they did in Charlottesville and other places is really wrong. I mean, it was a setup.
But it's their job to do wrong.
It's their job, but it's also just the ambiguity, because you can't pick a side. You really can't in this the situation that we have.
Even though people who get into law enforcement tend to be to the right politically, virtually all of their masters are far, far to the left.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so I'm actually starting to have some sympathy for police now, even though it's a group of people I have a general hatred for, because they're really between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
It's really bad. I'm going to give you one example of a real hero from Baltimore. This happened in Glen Burnie. This was after a softball game. This guy wasn't known to be a fighter, but he had a really good arm when he threw the ball. Don and this guy are coming out of this bar, and there's 5 guys beating the hell out of one guy. They're just really wearing this guy out. Mm. And Don can't get away from this quick enough. He's a lover, not a fighter. It's like, oh, he's skipping around this. And he's the one that tells me the story. And the other guy said, I'm not standing here and watching this. He said, get off of him. Mm. Well, these guys immediately attacked him. And as they got to him, he knocked them out. He'd hit each guy one time, and they would drop. He wasn't a big guy. Wow. He was just a wiry, athletic guy. And he knocks out all 5 of these rednecks who were all bigger than him. Okay? And it sounds like a really great story, a heroic story. But then they find out that this guy had raped the little sister of one of these guys.
Yeah.
Okay, well, to me, this guy's still a hero.
Yeah.
One guy beat the crap out of 5 guys.
Well, he made the choice. He made the choice he had to make with the information that he had, right. And he put himself at great risk.
Right. So and there's got to be a certain amount of impulsiveness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or else you don't have the heroic personality.
Yeah. Which I think that comes out in Conan, and that's a contrast.
The Conan character?
Yeah,
he's probably the most impulsive character in fiction.
Yeah, he's just a man of action. Just he's gonna evaluate and just do it instantly. And that's in contrast to these types of heavily world developed stories, where even these guys, the lords of Demonland, they had to go and have a committee meeting.
Yeah, they had to discuss it.
I remember reading somewhere that Star Trek was just like nothing. The one that I used to watch on TV, it's just the most important scene is the committee meeting where everybody goes in the room and just talks it over what they're gonna do.
I had some tolerance for the first Star Trek series.
Yeah.
The Star Trek: The Next Generation, I managed to see, unfortunately, some episodes as I was getting dressed to go to work.
Yeah.
My family would watch it. From what I saw of Star Trek: The Next Generation, I just wished that some Lee Van Cleef would just show up and blow the top of Picard's head off with a Navy 36. It's just.
I watched it as a kid. I watched a lot of that as a kid, but now I can't stand it. I like how the symptom of every alien attack or disease, or it's like you're in a bad mood. Like, Geordi's in a bad mood today. He's grouchy. He's yelling at people. He must have an alien burrowing into his brain. Like nobody can have a bad day unless they've been infected with a strange parasite or something.
It was just horrific.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I just you needed some Western heavies. Yeah, you need Slim Pickens shooting somebody with a shotgun, something, anything, just to put some gore on that bridge.
Yeah.
I just always despised it, and I didn't even know why. I just remember many times lacing on my work boots and looking up, and my oldest son and my wife are watching this. It's like, really? Oh, at least it's free TV. This was back when we, when we had the rabbit ears up,
Yeah.
but it wasn't cable TV.
Yeah.
Oh, at least I wasn't paying for it.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll have to talk more about some of Howard's characters sometimes.
Yeah. I need to read more. I haven't read nearly, not even anywhere near what you have, but it's all out there online. Oh, you know what I have been reading is RetroGenesis.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me what you think.
I think that it would make an amazing movie. It would be either like a B movie with just the gore flowing, from the first minute, or something like, I don't know, the guy that made District 9. I didn't see the movie. Did you see District?
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be a good pick for doing it. Do you know how that thing was written?
How?
Eric and I were coming back from the gym.
Mm-hmm.
The first scene in RetroGenesis is this fantasy he had when he was sitting across the table from this guy he worked with who he hated, and he just wanted to rip his face off. And it gave him this idea. He's like, what if I couldn't stop this? What if my mind just became an echo chamber and I kept saying it to myself until I did it?
Yeah.
So I said, how about an idea for an audio plague?
Yeah.
Where you have an audio plague. It's done by, your alphabet soup.
Right.
Intelligence agency of choice, just to get people to kill each other and to have a very quick call. So he sketched out a couple of characters, a couple of scenes he wanted in this one conversation. And he said, would you do it with me? He's like, I'm so busy. I mean, this is a real transitional time for him with his job. He's going into a management position. I say, look, I'll do it, but I don't want to have to make the decisions on what characters live and die.
Oh.
So before I write a scene, I'll just call you or email you for a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
How interesting.
So he basically decided who was going to die, and the art was up to me. My favorite character is Stamos, the crackhead. I think that's the best character I ever wrote.
I like him too.
Pizza delivery guy, crackhead.
Yeah, it's prefigured. The pizza delivery angle prefigured your Big Ron work. But I think I have to tell listeners that it's highly misogynistic work. Highly misogynistic. Most of the women end up naked, running around for their lives.
Oh, the main character, Donna.
Yeah,
That was my roommate.
the hipster bitch.
Right, and and she decided that was going to be. I said because she had that kind of job where she managed a building full of people in the same area where I said it.
Oh.
And I said, okay, if all your employees hated you, and she said, well, they did.
Yeah.
I said, what would they call you? And she said, I was the hipster bitch. So she read it, she followed it. I gave her a copy of it. She loved it. I said, you will not die. If I do a pattern character like this, I do not kill the person I base it on.
Uh-huh.
And it was, I asked her, what would you do in this situation? What would you do in that situation? And the one woman that's part of the think tank,
Jenny.
okay,
Yeah.
she was based on this Russian chick who I was coaching at the time. So her personality-wise, physicality, and everything, based it on her. I just remember this girl insisted on holding the door open for me as we're about ready to go into the dojo, and I'm going to run her through this workout. And she was adamant about it. I was like, okay, this kind of personality on a woman would work good in one of these last day on earth horror things. Mm-hmm. So I kind of based that character on her.
Okay. Yeah.
It's changed her color.
Okay.
Everything else was the same.
All right. So I'll pay close attention. But it's really good. I like it, and I'm about 3/4 of the way through it. But it fits in with the monumental insanity that we. Did you see this footage that a group of these Antifa were kicking and trying to beat up a bronze statue, and they destroyed this statue?
No.
Oh, it's the most bizarre thing because it's a mob of people and they're beating a statue.
Did the statue get sued after? Did they break any fingers or toes?
Well, they destroyed it. They knocked it down. But it's the kind of mass hysteria insanity that would fit into your book. Just I could never imagine using my own foot to kick a bronze statue. What could possibly cause people to do that? It's crazy. I'll find a link to the video and send it to you. It's really disturbing, actually.
Okay, well then it sounds like fun.
Yeah.
So please send it along.
I'm surprised it hasn't hit your inbox yet.
And thanks for reading RetroGenesis. I think you make the third person that's read it.
Well, I'm enjoying it.
Okay.
I will. Maybe it will get optioned for a movie. Have you ever talked to anybody who's like a screenwriter or something like that?
That was this guy, the guy that I wrote the book with.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was his. He had a friend that was a screenwriter or something. He works for the biggest comic book company in the nation, and so that was the reason why we started discussing this kind of stuff. But then his career just went crazy, and family and everything.
Yeah.
So he never ended up really being able to inquire for me, and yeah, that's okay. It's the only way you're going to make money writing fiction is if it gets optioned for a movie.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Maybe the people that did Sharknado will end up optioning either RetroGenesis or Planet Buzzkill.
Yeah. I haven't read Planet Buzzkill yet.
Planet Buzzkill is.
It's another end of the world.
It's not as gory, but it's more realistic and there's more humor in it.
Okay.
It's the most realistic Last Day on Earth story ever written.
Oh no.
It's the most realistic one.
I don't really need that. Excuse me. I don't really need that in my imagination.
It's from the point of view of 10, 12 people on the number 55 bus who are real people who I took the bus with, and Most of them I didn't even know their names. I just assigned them names.
Yeah.
I knew Black Mercedes' name. I knew Kendra's name. The Puerto Rican guy, I changed his name. Okay. You know, so it's, and it was based on a nightmare I had. I was spending the night at Megan's with her and her daughter, and I wake up alone in bed. There's nobody there. So I was like, well, you know, where are they at? So I walk out in the living room, and Megan's gotten really old. She's like 20 years older, and she's a Mexican chick. And her daughter is in the kitchen fighting off this insect. So it turns out this is a dream I'm having. It's not really me getting up out of Megan's bed. And it turns out that in a dream, it's this spider that's got like a little parachute on it. I roll up this catalog or something like that, and I smash it, and it bursts into a whole bunch of little spiders.
Oh.
And they go down my throat, and they start growing and crawling in my throat. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm not staying alive for this. Okay, I'm on the third floor, and I'm jumping out the window. Well, that would have been all right, but in my dream, I was the Mexican dude on the first floor.
Oh.
So in the dream, I jump out the window, and all I do is break my back. So I'm still alive, and I'm getting eaten from the inside by this. So that really disturbed me. So I decided to write it into a story using the characters that were on the bus when I got on the bus home from her house on Sunday morning. It was about church time, or from her apartment. And the hospital was right up the street and everything, so it's all real places on there, real people. The last character that shows up that I got the title Planet Buzzkill from, Jim Bob, he was my roommate in the basement at the time. This dude smoked more pot than any human being I ever knew. I mean, he lived in the basement, and I'm up on the top floor of this big house, and he would smoke pot from 5 o'clock Friday afternoon till midnight on Sunday night.
Wow.
And you could just hear him down there hacking up this tar. He could probably cough up his own hash oil.
Yeah.
Well, by Sunday evening, I had to get the hell out of the house because I was going to get a contact high.
Yeah.
And I worked for a place where they drug test you, so I'd have to leave. So I decided to make Jim Bob the hero, because when I lived with Jim Bob, and he was a dude that worked for me, and he got beat up by groups of oppressed individuals numerous times, trying to get back and forth to that job. I wanted to make him the hero of something, so I made him the hero of Planet Buzzkill.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so that was it. So I didn't plan on going on the Planet Buzzkill tangent, but it's something else that's hardly been read by anybody, and it's really just an excellent story.
Well, I'll get to it.
It's an easy read.
Yeah.
It's an easy read.
Oh, I'll get to it.
Sympathetic female characters?
Mostly end up nude.
Well, there's one bimbo that on that 55 bus, there was only one really good-looking chick.
Oh.
That ever took that bus. And she was the only person that the bus driver would stop for if she wasn't quite at the stop yet. So what I decided is we're going to see her after everybody gets on the bus and they lock it because they don't want to let these alien bugs in. They're not going to let anybody on the bus until they see her. And then one of the guys is going to say, "We can't let her die."
It comes back to that. It comes back to that.
Right. That's hot stuff. We can't let her die.
Yeah. This is such a theme with us lately, with your Big Ron story about who is he going to carry out of the bar.
Right.
And then we posted our Rahab piece today as well.
Yes, I like doing that. That was a good story.
Yeah, I thought I had to think about it. I kind of was embarrassed how long it took me to figure it out, but I think I got it.
And she's a perfect illustration of the modern American feminist. So I think it's great.
Yeah. Well, she's using the gifts that God gave her.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Right. So betraying her people.
Yeah.
But that's all right. She's got a new people.
She's got a new people, and they're the chosen people.
Right.
So it's obviously the smart thing to do, and she'll fit right in.
Yes.
Um, oh, geez. Yeah, where were we? Were we talking about the worm
Wrapping up the
Ouroboros?
fiction site.
Well, what was your favorite line? You said somewhere on page 14 and 15, your favorite line, James's favorite line. Let's
My
see.
favorite one. My favorite one.
In chapter 1 of the worm.
Uh, the worm Ouroboros. There was uh, the ambassador from Witchland. Turns out he's got like a monkey tail,
Yeah,
which reminded me of the flying monkeys from the
the
Wizard of
Wizard of
Oz.
Oz. Oh, okay.
And he's running out of the place, and everybody's laughing at him so harshly and so sardonically that he's running as if he's in great fear of his life, and he's afraid to look over his shoulder at the horror that follows him.
Yeah.
And the way he wrote that was very nicely. I also very much liked the way he wrote a description of how one man passes the ball of conversation, and in a certain way, that there's a lot of nuance in the dialogue. It's not just he said this, he said that.
Yeah. I also was struck by that. I really liked it.
So he's real good in
Yeah.
spots.
As one who but idly returneth the ball of conversation, yet clearly so that all might hear. It's kind of a laconic delivery, of the rejoinder there. I liked it.
Yeah, I liked it very much. Pleased with his writing style. The dreamy, even though I've written some of stuff in this vein, the dreamy setting's not my favorite setting, but if it's done right, it can be pretty nice.
Yeah, I think so. I definitely like it so far. I'll stick with it. There's some warnings out there that it's really slow and kind of hard to read, but I think we'll get through it.
Well, at least it's not 3 books. I looked at it as one.
Yeah.
I eventually want to do the Book of the New Sun with you, 4 volumes by Gene Wolfe. It's a masterpiece. It gets terrible reviews on Amazon. If you like it, you'll be the first woman to ever like this book.
Oh, now I have to like it.
We would have to build a Confederate statue for you somewhere
No.
as the one traitorous woman that liked Gene Wolfe's Book of the New Sun.
No. Well, I liked Moby Dick. I don't think that's often read by women or finished by anyone.
Right. It's not liked by women very much.
Yeah.
And it's not written for them.
No. I just jump in where I don't belong.
Okay. Well, we're glad to have you here on Planet Meathead, Lynn.
Thank you. It's nice of you to join. I definitely worry that I don't want to leave behind too much estrogen on your website. So,
well, that's appreciated.
yeah, I know you won't. You won't allow that to happen. The con will not put up with that.
Well, the con won't allow it. I might allow it.
Yeah, the con will step
not
in
the con.
when he needs to. When he comes to visit you when you've had too many beers.
I imagine him as the guy in that's the Genghis Khan knockoff in the Conan movie,
Yeah.
where Conan's sitting in chains on a table and he says, "What is good in life?"
Yeah.
That's how I envision the Khan. It's just, some guy that only makes sense when he's drunk, and then only in limited spheres of inquiry.
Yeah, I've seen that clip of that movie. I just haven't seen the whole movie.
Yeah, that's it. So that's the Khan. That's all you have to know about the Khan.
All right. I know more than I want to about the con, actually. Maybe he'll come for an interview one day. What do you think? For a podcast interview? Think the con could be available?
Yeah, well, we'd have to time that so that I was not so drunk that I was slurring my words. But yeah, we'll do that. That'll be the inebriated podcast, and then you will get to interview the con.
All right. Maybe I'll drink too. Yeah, we'll see. Well, I'm 3 hours earlier than you.
Now, one of us has to be
One of
sober.
us has to be sober, because then I'll just lose all the files and it won't do
Right.
any good.
Right. There has to be an adult in the virtual room.
Well, should we wrap it up, do you think, James?
Uh, the fiction part, yeah.
Fiction part. Okay, should we move over to current events?
Whatever strikes your fancy.
Oh, I don't know. The current event, it's all stressing me out right now. I'm under a lot of stress right now.
Okay.
I feel it. I just feel that that it's getting real, to use the vernacular. Things are getting real, right? With people just losing their minds in public, and the violence and all this. It's stressing me out.
Do you want the crackpot theory on this?
Sure.
Okay. Uh, the people that are going most insane are people of European descent,
Mm-hmm.
and they have we have a certain percentage of Neanderthal genes
Yep.
in us.
Yep.
Uh, if anybody's designed for an ice age on this planet, it's these people of European descent, and they all seem to be going insane. They are like the I don't know if it's Norwegian, Swedish, what's going on in Sweden? What's going on in Northern Europe when
Yeah.
them just come and rape and kill our women
It's total insanity.
voluntarily?
Yeah.
People not wanting to have children and just en masse, just not wanting to have children and wanting to bring in people who hate them who have a lot of children.
Yep.
This is really, it's unprecedented since the 200s in Rome, 200s AD, and the 200s BC in the Hellenic world. You had periods like this where people just they didn't want to have kids. They just wasted away. The cities ended up empty.
Mm.
They never went with the replacement thing because you didn't have this all this easy
Pipeline.
travel that we have now.
Yeah.
But I have a theory that we've had 3 Augusts now in Baltimore that have been cool. Every night is cool. There's
Yeah.
not a single hot night. We've had, most people think that temperature is the big deal that happens with the coming of an ice age, but it's really precipitation is the big change. You have a drought somewhere in the world, and in other parts of the world, you get huge amounts of precipitation, and it cools everything down.
Yeah.
And that's what we're getting here. I take an umbrella to work every day.
Yeah.
We have downpours that aren't even accompanied with thunder and lightning like they usually are in the summer.
What does that mean? We never get thunder and lightning here, so I don't really know.
Well, usually at the end of summer, if you have downpours in Baltimore, it's thunder. You get thunder and lightning with it. But
Yeah.
we've just been having downpours. The water table's way up. People's plants are rotting.
Mm.
There's so much water. This happened in Europe during the mini ice age where the grain crops just rotted because
Right.
there was so much rain, and it just slowly cooled down. We are on track to go into the next major chill.
Yeah.
Okay, the Holocene maximum was 8,500 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is supposed
yeah.
to be, these things are like 10,000-year events.
So the sun cycles are lower than they've ever been. The sunspots are really low.
See, I didn't know that, but maybe my Neanderthal.
So you think
Right.
that we're like receiving a message through the daylight that we have to get ready for calamity?
I think we're basically committing suicide to crash our population. Almost like we know that it's going to happen in our bones, and that's when people from the northern latitudes don't want to have children anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, they literally don't, and they're inviting in people that are killing them and displacing them and beating them up and raping them, and it's just crazy.
Yeah.
So that's a theory. I think maybe Reverend Chandler is really going to happen now.
Well, it feels like fall here already. It's been
Same
warm
here.
during the day, but it's been breezy and cool at night. We haven't had any rain yet, but our rain doesn't start until usually October.
I experienced 2 weeks ago, I experienced the heaviest rain of my life that was not accompanied by high winds. And it's hard to tell how heavy the rain is when the winds are real high because
Right.
you know much of the force is caused by the wind. It was like buckets were being dropped on top of.
Like a tropical feeling.
It was. I haven't been in the tropics, so I don't know. But the sound on the roof of the bus shelter that I was under
Yeah.
was deafening. I was there for a half hour hoping it would let up enough so I could walk across the street without getting totally soaked. Because
Wow.
I had over a mile to walk, and I've got to work in refrigeration.
Yeah.
I don't want to show up
You
there
don't wanna be
soaking wet.
Yeah.
And it just kept pouring down harder. So I eventually called work, and a couple of the guys came down and picked me up in their
Wow.
Jeep.
That's crazy.
So I'm wondering if maybe this is. Ishmael sent me pictures of him in June, the beginning of June,
Yeah.
with a 20-foot snowpack behind him up in the mountains. And he hadn't seen anything like this before. He hadn't seen that much snow that late in the year. You sent me that one news story about a pass that didn't open until, what, August the 4th or something?
It was end of July, close to August. Yeah.
Right.
Crazy.
Wow. So what? You're going to have a couple of months that's open, and then it's snow the rest of the year.
Yeah.
It'll build on itself. Once the glaciers start to increase, then they're going to increase more.
Yeah.
And it's not going to take as long as people think to build up massive ice flows.
Well, that's what we don't really know. I mean, you can only speculate, but you assume that it cools slowly over time, but what if it doesn't? You know, what if it just happens in 10 years? Because people, you know, your natural frame of reference is like from your childhood, right? And you remember how hot or cold it was or whatever, but that's nothing in geological time.
When I was a kid, we were going through a temperature dip and a precipitation increase, and all this global warming BS actually grew out of theories about the return of the ice age that were going on in the late 60s and the early 70s. And then when things warmed and Margaret Thatcher needed an excuse to push nuclear power and bust the coal miner unions, then they just reworked it all into this global warming myth,
Right.
which it's totally shot now. I think we've had lowering temperatures for like 15 years now.
And they keep messing with the temperature records. They go back and just rewrite all the numbers, and then, you know, someone will leak
They
it.
left out the little ice age.
Yeah, they just completely.
They just omitted that.
You can't believe anything.
That only took a generation. The little ice age only took a generation,
Yeah.
and it really changed the world.
Yeah.
So, and when that was going on over there, you had droughts over here. When that was going on in Europe, you had droughts in Western North America that wiped out whole civilizations.
Right.
You had the Chaco Indians. You had the mound builders at Cahokia. These places just went away.
Mm. And that's What was the year or the time period that happened?
But it's the little ice age is happening from right about when the plague came in, the early 1300s, on to the most severe last year was 1816. It snowed in August.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have about 500 years.
That's a long time.
And it starts, but this is one of the little minis that goes in between the big ones. There was another mini ice age that seems to have accounted for what we call the Dark Age. And these are not major ice ages.
No,
okay?
They're just
these
little
are
blips.
dips.
Yeah.
Right.
And we're so used to having complete control over nature that it's going to be a shock. When the weather gets severe, it's always shocking for us here in California. We're used to very mild weather, and our houses have no insulation, no cooling. People don't appreciate when you just have all this climate control and everything. People don't appreciate that weather is a big deal. I used to work in Wichita, and nobody, you know, in winter in Wichita, it's not even that severe, but there would be days when it wouldn't get warmer than like 5 degrees Fahrenheit during the day. And, your typical California girl like me, who's really never been out of the state very much, just does not comprehend that kind of weather.
And people don't realize what being inland means.
Yeah.
That, that these oceans actually
regulate,
help warm things up.
Yeah. They keep things steadier. Yeah, and the wind, and that prairie wind, it's like it starts in Canada and then it hits you in Wichita. Ouch. It's really windy there.
I'm hoping that we're looking at, just really for humanity, I'm hoping we're looking at another ice age, because if we don't have something to stop this this growth, maximum growth of the lowest quality human material possible, and expansion of the most debased ethoses, ethoses that we've come up with as humans, then I think you just end up with a big factory farm for humans.
Yeah.
So I think an ice age would be better.
Yeah, I do too.
Maybe, it would. The planet's only going to carry, I think, 10%.
Well, I don't want to think about that.
I do.
No.
It should be a better 10%.
I guess so.
But anyways, it's just a crackpot theory. I thought I would throw it out there because it's the Crackpot podcast, and
yeah, we have to keep it focused on crackpot issues.
Right.
But it's a mass hysteria. Whatever it's driving it, is it the sun cycles? Is it an audio plague from another planet? I don't know.
A lot of it, I think, is just increased stupidity of people.
Yeah.
People are not as smart. We're not as smart as we used to be.
All right. I want to bring up James Damore. Okay, here's another weird thing, James. Your name is James. This
Yes.
Google guy's name is James. The guy that rammed his car in Charlottesville is named James. And then there was some other person named James coming up. It's like a weird thing.
It's the name of evil men.
No, but James Damore. Okay, did you catch up on this Google thing, or should I recap it for you?
You know what? All I caught about it was Baruch on his Medium feed was going back and forth with all these leftoids.
Okay.
And, and just letting them know that, hey, this is what it is to be on the right, is what you fantasized about it being under McCarthy.
Yes.
Under that. He said, and they weren't killing anybody.
Okay, but let's start at the beginning, if you don't mind. Do you mind?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't mind.
Well, because this is my thing. I know it's probably not your thing, but
it's all right.
It's crackpotish. It'll fit in. Okay, so this guy, James Damore, he's just a soft-spoken nerd, really super smart guy. He's not trained in software. He's not trained in computer programming. The way he got his job at Google was that Google holds these coding contests, and the guy just showed up and won. All right? Okay, so he's a smart guy. So he's a white man. He might even be heterosexual.
Oh, okay.
He gets to Google, and there are portions of Google that obviously are really just focused on getting the work done. They have to be, because there's a lot of work to be done. And there are other huge portions of Google, as there are in any large organization, that is all about all kinds of nonsense and how just to waste money and have a nice job with benefits and not have to actually do any work. And so Google has this tremendous social justice machine, right?
Okay.
So this guy started getting sick of it because there's all kinds of special measures taken for women, for minorities, for whatever, sexual minorities, particular big thing here in Silicon Valley. So he wrote this memo, which was extremely mild, polite, extremely qualified. He wrote several times that he values diversity, blah, blah, blah. But he put in a bunch of evidence saying that, in particular for women versus men, that the reason maybe the reason that women are not 50% of software writers, of computer programmers, maybe it's because women aren't really into it. you know? It's a crazy idea, but I don't know. I mean, to me it's obvious and funny. It just makes me laugh because I took a few programming classes. I could do it if I really had to, but it's odious. It's not fun to do for me. Whereas you have these other guys who just can't stop doing it. It's their nature. They just love doing it. So he wrote this memo, and it circulated within Google for a while, and nobody paid much attention. And then somehow it got leaked out into the world, and then he was quickly fired and quickly just turned into a huge villain. But he has not apologized. He's not backed down.
Good for him.
And he has, that's another really lame thing about Charlottesville is it knocked him out of the news, and that's really a much more useful story. And this is what I meant about that the truth is leaking out. You have this guy he went to Harvard. He's my people, okay? That, you have your people. These are my people. They're nerds. They're just into stupid things like Star Trek or whatever. And he has absorbed enough of the truth somehow, even here in the belly of the beast, that he sees the truth and he's not backing down.
Well, the truth is getting out. Well, it's there. So much stuff is plain to see. The important thing is that people who might be tempted to see the truth or act on it will be paying attention when guys like this get crucified. I mean, that's how you run things. The things with the big companies like that, I didn't know anything about these type of big companies, but it doesn't surprise me because corporations this is a competing model for the state. So if states are doing a lot of social justice stuff, corporations are going to mimic it too, because they're hoping that when states implode, that they'll be the replacement states in a global economy.
Absolutely. Google was very deeply intertwined with the Obama administration, with the State Department, and worked really hard to get Hillary elected. So that was, I think, a big shock for the organization. But the fact is that this guy is of Google. You know what I mean? This is a Google person. He loves technology, and he has rebelled. And
it's an apostate. That's
great. But there are more like him, and the smart people, like you say, with that as an aggregate we're getting dumber, and that's true. But they're still smart people, and after a while, it's hard to keep lying to yourself.
It means more to be smart now, as the general intelligence goes down.
Yeah.
And there's certain countries where the general intelligence is low, and you have a higher incidence of dictatorships because one person can impose their will on a broader population. So, that's a good thing especially for people aspiring tyrants and evil, diabolical people like myself.
Yeah.
You want to be surrounded by idiots so that you can impose your will.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully this guy does okay for himself.
He is.
Yeah,
he's going to be fine. He's been offered jobs publicly by WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, and by the people at Gab, which is a Twitter alternative.
Good.
Yeah. So but it's really heartening. I think it's really heartening to the other dissenters that this guy has the courage to come out, not apologize, and stand up for his beliefs. He hasn't backed down. He hasn't backed down one bit.
I'm very glad.
Me too.
That the alternative platforms for information technology are going to be hugely important. I know nothing about it, but there's got to be something developed where free thinking people can get access to servers.
Yeah.
That aren't controlled by
Jeff Bezos owns all the.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have no idea how that goes, but hopefully somebody can work it out.
They will. I think. Are we out of time, James?
Yes. I think that's it for today.
Thank you for listening to episode 7 of the Crackpot podcast with James LaFond and Lynn Lockhart.